Well, good morning, South Carolina, and happy Monday morning to you. Welcome to day 2 of new coordinators training. The last one that we did in person, and we sure enjoyed getting to meet all of the new faces that are coming on as federal programs directors and Title I coordinators and Title II coordinators, and the list goes on. It was so very nice for my team and myself to be able to meet with you in person last time. Today we decided to meet with you virtually due to the start of school. I know that many districts are starting school today and tomorrow, and in that role are very occupied. And so we wanted to come live to you today and virtually so that we could record the session and post it for those who will need to tune in later. So, excuse me, if you have joined us today, we are glad to have you as a part of this training. We are hopeful that today's session will be very beneficial to you in your new role. I'm assuming that most of the folks on here are new to either Title II, Title IV, or Title V. Excuse me, as that is the focus of today's training. So welcome aboard. We're going to have a basic training today. I'm going to take a moment and share my screen with you again so that you can see today's agenda. One moment. Here we go. Technology is wonderful when it works. So this is the agenda for the morning session. Most of the time I notice that when we do in-person training, it's a little bit slower because we're able to do a lot of interacting with you. So I kind of do not expect us to go exactly by this schedule. I feel like we may finish early before I plan to for lunch. If that is the case, we may roll on into the next section so that we can take lunch around 11:30. So we'll see how it goes this morning. The afternoon session will look like this. We'll go over Title II and Title V in the afternoon session, and we'll have a time of question and answer. So that being said, we'll see how our time frame goes today and go from there. But we're looking forward to sharing some information with you this morning. Just a bit of housekeeping before we get started. My team is looking forward to seeing you, whether, you know, they'll have their cameras on today, although we can't really see you. But we do want to ask you if you don't mind keeping your camera turned off and your mic muted throughout the course of the training so that we don't have any kind of like echoing going on in the background today. So if you'll just do that for us. Also, we're going to have segments this morning as we present. And so if you have questions, I would like for you to use the comment feature within Teams and type in your questions into that. One of the ladies on my team, her name is Martha Walker. She's new to this team. She is going to be fielding those questions. And so we will do like a set of questions for the first section prior to us talking about Title IV. So if you have any questions about anything that we go over as far as our team, allowable use of funds, kind of grants, housekeeping and procedures, or due dates, any kind of financial business that we go over this morning, if you would just type your questions into the comment feature, we will pause prior to going into Title IV and take those questions at that time. And then we'll go over Title IV. And if you have questions about Title IV, if you'll type those into the chat box as well. And once we finish Title IV, we'll take all of those questions. And then we'll see if we're going to forge on into doing some of Title II or if we're up to our 11:30 lunch hour. Once we go over Title II, we'll take another little round of questions and have questions and answers. So any questions that you have related to Title II during that presentation, if you'll type those in, we'll have that section of question and answer. And then we'll do Title V and the same. We'll have questions and answers after that. And then I'll come back at the end and take any questions that you may have just in general, and kind of close out the day. So that is how we will go about taking care of that. So at this time, I'm going to get the party started by sharing the PowerPoint. So give me one moment to get my screen shared. Oh. Okay. Now I'm going to turn my camera off while I'm doing this. You should be able to hear me. Martha, if anybody puts any comments in there about not being able to hear or anything like that, if you will just unmute yourself and let me know that. Right now, you should be seeing the title page called New Coordinators Day 2 Training. There's more to this than money, and it is. Although on my team, we mainly deal with the money, giving out allocations, and we're going to talk about all the different things that my team is responsible for this morning. So again, I'm Jennifer Rhodes, and I'm the team lead for the Consolidated Finance and Applications team. So this morning, we're going to have a little bit of training on the money piece. As you are new coming into these roles, and then we're going to get into the programs outside of Title I. We did Title I on the first day of new coordinators, so today we're going to move into the other titles that my team oversees, so Title II, 4, and 5. So let's get the party started. Okay, what are the roles and responsibilities for this team? So I scripted out a lot of the things that our team does. So you may ask yourself, well, what is it that Jennifer's team is responsible now for doing? For those that have been in the field for a long time, you know that our office has restructured some things. And so a lot of changes have occurred within the division. So I wanted to kind of go over our responsibilities as far as the Consolidated Finance and Applications team are concerned. We used to be known as the Title I team. That is what we called ourselves. Although we did handle Title II and school improvement, we really just kind of went by the name Title I. Well, now that we are restructured, we actually this team oversees applications of Title I, II, 4, and 5. Neglected and delinquent will soon be on our side, and right now we are doing some of the first level looks at ATSI and CSI. So we take a look at those applications. We also calculate allocations and track claims. Now in a few moments, Sheree Mosley, who is our leading lady for doing allocations and calculating those, she will be talking to you about how we will be tracking claims with the 22 grants. This is something that is new for our office. In the past, we would send out email reminders about quarterly claiming, very friendly reminders, but we are now moving forward into setting some expectations and setting goals in the spirit of continuous improvement. If you were able to join me on the August 5th team meeting, you heard a lot more about that. You're going to hear about that again today when Sheree Mosley takes a turn. So one of the biggest things that goes on our side is creating allocations for Title I, 2, ATSI, CSI, 4, 5, and N and D. We also track the claims for that. There is a 15% carryover threshold specific to Title I. We take care of looking to make sure that the district has spent down to the 15% with Title I only. That does not have any weight or bearing on Title II, 4, or 5. This is something that's specific to Title I. So if you are a new Title II, 4, or 5 coordinator, you do not have to worry about trying to get down to 15%, although we will go over with you what the claiming expectations are for those programs today. Another thing that our office does is we issue GANs. GANs are issued in the fall when we do final allocations. So right now, if you're a new coordinator, you have probably noticed that you're working on preliminary applications within the GEM system. For Title I has already come in, Title II, Title IV. Title IV should be the one that really should be focused on right now because the others, the deadlines have already passed. But during the fall, we go back into GEMS and we tweak GEMS to match the final allocations that we are giving out. We cannot pass a GAN out to the districts until we have received a finalized GAN from the U.S. Department of Ed. In the fall, that encompasses all of the funding that we're being given per program. And so all at one time, the superintendents are sent a GAN that correlates to the final allocations that are in GEMS and to the allocations that are uploaded in GAPS. This is almost a simultaneous event that goes on somewhere around the October mark. My team is in process of reviewing all the applications that have been submitted for Title I and Title II right now. So if you are a new coordinator, you may have come into a situation where the plan or the project was already done for you. If that is the case, I am hoping that today's training will be really good for you to kind of hear the basics so that going into the next year, you'll be ready to do the GEMS project yourself or the online application. So we issue GANs in the fall. We process grant closeout. So for, let's say, for instance, the 19 grant is closing out right now. We are taking a very close look at where we are as far as the districts and how much money they have left to make sure that no funding is left on the table. So if you are new coming into this role, please make a note that it is imperative that you make sure that you try to leave no funding on the table by the end of the grant. That is another reason why we track claims and set goals. So I did want to mention to you that with the tracking of the claims, please know when Sheree Mosley goes over this today that it is specific to the grants that are managed by my team. So specific to Title I, Title II, Title IV, and Title V. Okay, we also manage GEMS. What does that mean? That means that we have a program manager that is assigned to every district. So for instance, I might be assigned to Florence 1. That means that I am Florence 1's contact for Title I, Title II, Title IV, and Title V. In a few moments, I will go over the project assignments and you will see a chart that lets you know who is assigned to what district. We do this on purpose because we want you to have one contact that you can become very familiar with. They can be your support system as you work through the grant process. So if you have not yet met your project manager, please make sure that you send an email or feel free to make a phone call. We are here to support you. Please do not feel that you cannot call our office for assistance. We are here to support you. Just like a teacher supports a student, we do the same thing. We're here to support you. We would rather work with you on the front end to make sure that you have a clear understanding of the expectations rather than on the back end where we might be trying to clean something up. So please feel free to call for technical assistance at any time that you feel that you need it. Okay, we also approve budgets in GAPS. This is one area that I am pretty much solely responsible for. So what happens is you submit your projects in GEMS and you get those approved at final allocation time. And then once you get an approved project in GEMS at final allocation time, you can go into GAPS and create your budget in GAPS to match your budget overview in GEMS. Once that GAPS budget is approved, then you can begin making your quarterly claims. So if you have any questions regarding GAPS or the GAPS budgeting process, you are welcome to email me at jrhodes@ed.sc.gov, or you can email Sarah Wagers. In a little bit, I will talk about the 2 new ladies who have joined our team. But the 2 of us take a look into gaps. Jewel Stanley is also available, as she was the team lead for a long time for this team. She still has rights to gaps. That is just a little bit of checks and balances within our division and internal control, so that it's not just mainly one person having all the access for gaps. So any of us can answer questions regarding that, so please feel free to contact me should you have any questions regarding gaps. Like I said, we're here to provide technical assistance to you and to advocate for parent and family engagement in private schools. So we actually, each one of us kind of has a specialty area within our office. So if you need to ask questions regarding private schools or equitable services, you would contact Theresa Gregory. She is our guru for doing private schools and equitable services. You'll be hearing a lot more from Leslie Blows regarding parent and family engagement as the year progresses on. So again, these are our responsibilities and we're here to support you. Okay, a while ago I mentioned to you the project assignments and who everybody is assigned to. So this gives you a little visual of who is doing what for the 22 grants. This is not the first time I have presented this, and it has also come out by email, but this lets you know who your contacts are. We have 2 new team members. They've been with us less than a month now. Some of you know Sarah Wagers from the Grants Accounting Office. She is the gaps queen, in my opinion. You may have worked with her before on getting budgets straightened out. She has provided a lot of technical assistance regarding gaps from the Grants Accounting Office. I am proud to say that she has now joined my team. So not only is she able to do finance, but she's going to move into programmatic work as well. So very happy to have Sarah Wagers as a part of my team. And then I have a lady by the name of Martha Walker. She is coming from a district, so she is equipped with a lot of school experience and has worked in programs outside of the classroom. Very smart and a quick study, and I'm so glad to have Martha on my team. You'll be hearing from her periodically throughout the day as she is fielding the questions for me. So if Martha is already in process of talking with a lot of her districts, so if you have not made contact, please be sure to do that. She's delightful and will be a great asset to our team. So these are the project assignments. Most of you should already know the rest of my team members. These folks are wonderful. They do an awesome job on a day-to-day basis. We have Leslie Blows, Marcus Corbett, Theresa Gregory, and Sheree Mosley. Most of you have been in contact with them for some time now. We actually served as a team under Jewel Stanley. So most of us have been around for a little while. We're happy to continue our work with you, but if you are brand new and have never met us, please by all means shoot us an email, make a phone call. We'd love to get to know you. Okay, and I am going to turn it over to Leslie Blows for just a few minutes to talk to you about allowable use of funds.
Good morning, everyone. So we're going to talk about allowable use funds. Jennifer, I'm going to just have you progress the slides for me because there's only like 4 that I'm rolling with, if you don't mind. Perfect. All right, so when we're talking about allowable costs and federal grants, we follow a hierarchy to the allowability. So we start with our laws and regulations, and then EDGAR is where we really hang our hat as far as the fiscal parts. And then for clarification, we sometimes rely on program guidance and the U.S. Department of Ed policy letters. You can go on to the next one for me. Thank you. All right, so speaking of EDGAR, If you were to pull out that lovely book, yours might be orange. They've just come out with a new one. It's purple now, the 5th edition. So if you were to pull out your Edgar book and look at 2 CFR Part 200.403, you'll see that to determine allowability, and it must be necessary and reasonable for the performance of the federal award and be allocable under these principles right here. So we really focus on necessary, reasonable, and allocable, but remember it must conform to Edgar, and remember those terms and conditions that you agree to in your GAN. Also, it needs to be consistent with state and local policies. It needs to provide consistent treatment. It needs to be adequately documented, and of course supplemental. And with the new Edgar version, there's an addition of Part H, which says the cost must be incurred during the approved budget period. And then just a couple of updates from Bruceton and Manasovitz. We referenced these things or talked about them pretty in detail at the last training, but just remember that with Title I funding that we can't buy refreshments for professional development or staff meetings. And we also cannot purchase any items that are for public relation purposes. So no t-shirts or anything with your school as a promotional opportunity. And I think that's it for me right now. I'll see you guys in a little bit.
Thank you so much, Leslie. Sheree, would you like for me to run the slides, or do you want to request control?
No, you can run them for me if you don't mind.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you so very much. Good morning. As Jennifer said earlier, my name is Sheree Mosley, and one of my primary responsibility is calculating the allocations. But I also do have a few districts where I review applications, so that definitely does keep me in the loop of everything that's going on. So again, we're just going to go ahead and get started. So first topic is grants housekeeping. Just for a clean reminder, just letting districts know that it's imperative that districts do their quarterly claiming. Submitting them timely is just a part of good fiscal practice. We also just want to let you all know that claims will be tracked on a quarterly basis, and I'll be in contact with each district, primarily in the beginning and also toward the end of the quarter. But we'll get we'll get more into that a little bit later. And also just a reminder for the GAP system that it does shut down automatically. The Title I office has no power over that situation. So we just ask that, you don't wait until the wee hours of the night to try to get those claims submitted. Next slide. Okay, and this is our claiming criteria. As Jennifer discussed earlier, that we are introducing new claiming criteria on how we are just trying to get districts to submit claims quarterly and just making sure that they're spending down their funds. As you can see, we have Title I, Title II, Title IV, and Title V. The top part of the grant here is the first year, and then the second part of the grant, the part that's at the bottom, is the second year of the grant. As you can see, for the first quarter, that we don't really have any expectations for you guys for that first quarter. Things are just kind of getting ramped up, so there we don't have any expectations there. However, going into the second quarter, we do have the expectations set. For example, as you can see for Title I, the expectation for the second quarter, is 40%. And then as you see, it progresses on to the third quarter, 60%, and then the fourth quarter for year one, which is 85%. And then for the second year, as you can see, it progresses to 85, 90, 95, and then 100%. As you can also see, we do have those same expectations for Title II, Title IV, and Title V. However, the claiming percentages are a little bit different, 15%, 30%, and 50%. But we just kind of just want you, this is just something that we want to put in place for good fiscal practices. This will not necessarily affect your risk assessment, but it just helps us to be accountable, not only to ourselves and to our office, but also to the students that we serve, that we're using the money and spending the money, because we do not want to send any funds back to U.S. Department of Education. We do not want to give them the impression that we do not need the money, need the funds that they're sending us. So again, this is just to assist districts with meeting the thresholds, and that we're just spending the money timely. Okay, and just for amendments, some reminders, for Title I, the Title I coordinators, they initiate their amendments, and amendments are approved prior to the implementation. In other words, you can't do something and then submit the amendment. We ask that you get anything that you want to do, that you get those things approved prior to, you get your amendment done first. Sorry. So Title I coordinator informs project managers that the amendments are needed, and then the Title I coordinator initiates the revisions within GEMS under the revision started. And then Title I coordinators resubmit those projects to the project managers for approvals to make the appropriate changes and gaps. And then Title I coordinators communicates with the finance director. And so once finance submits the amendments to SCDE, then we will approve it in gaps. Again, with this entire situation, communication is key. It is important that your finance manager, your Title I coordinators, that everyone is communicating the processes just to ensure that you get the proper approvals that you need. Okay, and on to grants accounting process changes. Okay, just a reminder, state fiscal year is from July 1 through July 30th. The federal fiscal year is October 1 through September 30th. South Carolina Department of Education, we receive 2 GANs. We receive a partial GAN on July 1 and then a full GAN on October the 1st. Allocations are then calculated and loaded into GEMS sometime between May, June, and July, so districts can begin their planning stages. There is a new procedure where grants accounting will not load the grant into gaps until the final GAN has been received from U.S. Department of Ed. Therefore, applications can be approved will be approved, but the districts will have to wait until October to load the budget into gaps. And also just another reminder with indirect costs will be updated for both the new grants and the old grants at the time of final allocations. We know in the past, when we would do the old grants, whatever indirect costs we loaded there, we would leave that alone. And then for the new grants, we would update those grants with the new indirect costs. But we have since learned that indirect costs are 1 year only. And so when we go into update the new indirect costs for the new grants, we'll be updating the indirect costs for the old grants as well. Okay, and just some updates and due dates that we have here. As you can see, for updates, the awarded is just a list of all of the allocations that we've already awarded for preliminary statuses, which is the 22 Title I, 22 Title II, 22 Title IV, and the 22 NND allocations. The allocations that are still to be awarded is the 22 REAP allocations and all final allocations. And just a couple of due dates for your information. Title I was due on July 1st. Title II was due on July 31st. Title V is due on August the 31st. And just a couple closeout reminders for you for the 2019 expiring grants on September 30th, 2021. And I think that's all for me right now.
Thank you so much, Sheree.
You're welcome.
So I'm going to take a moment and just pause and see if we have any questions thus far regarding anything that we have presented prior to moving into Title IV. Okay, Martha?
Good morning. I do not see any questions at this point, but I will keep monitoring the chat box.
Okay, sounds good. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Theresa Gregory. Theresa, would you like for me to click through the slides, or do you want to request control?
Can you go ahead and do it?
Sure.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. I don't know, I guess the light is kind of bad in the room here. But good morning, everyone. I probably will go ahead and turn my camera off, but I just wanted to speak to everyone and see, so you can see me. My name is Theresa Gregory, and now I'm going to take you through the Title IV Student Support and Academic Enrichment Grant. As you can see, we're going to give you a little background about Title IV. Under the subpart 1 of Title IV, Part A, ESSA was the one that actually did it in 1965, but it was reauthorized by the Every Student Succeed Act in 2015. This is when it was actually created, where the Student Support and Academic Enrichment Program, commonly referred to as Title IV, Part A, was created. The SSAE program is intended to improve student academic achievement by increasing the capacity of the student educational agencies, the local educational agencies, which we refer to as LEAs. Under this, we want to provide all students with access to a well-rounded education, improve the school conditions for the students, and of course we want to use it for the technology in order to improve the academic achievement for all of our students. There are 3 content areas that we need to focus on. We have well-rounded, and you have to use at least 20% of your funds for well-rounded. For the safety and healthy part, we have to use the same 20% as well for this particular content area. Now, when it comes down to your technology portion of it, you cannot use more than 15% of your Title IV funds in this content area. So you have to kind of keep track of what you're doing when it comes down to calculating your amounts to be used for the 3 content areas. Under the content areas, we're going to break them down. The very first one is your well-rounded area. This is improving access to foreign languages, instructions, arts, and music, and education. We want to make sure that you're providing programming to improve the instruction of the students' engagement in your science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, known to us as STEM. Also make sure that we are promoting access to accelerated learning opportunities, AP and IB programs, and of course dual enrollment programs for early college and high school, strengthening the instruction in American history, civics, government education, and environmental education. All of this is consistent of your well-rounded content area. Your next content area is going to actually be your safe and healthy. Make sure we are promoting community and parent involvement in the schools. Under this area, you want to establish or improving dropout prevention. Implementing programs that support a healthy and active lifestyle. We also want to develop relationship building skills to help improve the safety through the recognition of prevention. And then, of course, we want to establish community partnerships. This is actually your content area for safe and healthy. Our next content area, which is the third one, is known as for technology. Under the technology portion of it, supporting high quality professional development for educators, school leaders, and administrators to personalize learning and improve academic achievement. Make sure that we're building the technology so that we have the capacity and the infrastructures for our students. Carrying out innovation blended learning projects, and of course, delivering specialized or rigorous academic courses and curricula using technology. This would include the digital learning technologies and the assistive technology. The next thing that we were going to move on to is going to be the allocations to the LEAs. A little bit of background here. In general, the department allocates the student support and academic enrichment program funds to the state by a formula based on each state's share of funds under Title I, Part A. The SEA will award the SSAE subgrants to the LEAs by formula in the same proportion as the LEA's prior year's Title I, Part A allocations. Now, for each LEA, the allocations, reservations for the state administration is 1% of that total. You also have the reservation for the state level activities, which is at 2% of the total, which means the LEA allocations will always be 97% or the remainder of your total. Please keep in mind, though, that you do have periods of performance. Each grant is open for a 27-month period. So as we see the timeline here on the screen, 2019 grant was running from July 1st to 2018 to September 30th of 2021. Keep in mind this was only extended because of that 1 year, extended 1 year due to COVID-19. Your 2020 grant will be ending on September 30th of 2021. And 2021's grant is ending in September of 2022. And now we have the 22 grant, and this grant will be ending in September of 2023. The state's fiscal year ends on June 30th. So please keep in mind that your claims through June 30th of each year has to be submitted in GAPS by August the 15th. Needs assessment. I know that each and one of you were with us last month when we actually did the needs assessment discussion, and of course I was the one privileged to do it. It is important that we make sure that these needs assessments meet exactly what would be required for the schools. And how do we come about this? Is your stakeholder involvement. We need to make sure that when you're doing your Title IVs, you have your teachers, your principals, you have other school leaderships, you got instructional support personnel and private school administrators involved when you're doing your needs assessment. Your online applications is actually based on the needs assessment and the allocations awarded. So for the guidance of USED and SCDE when developing your plans, it is always important to make sure you have the guidance from the U.S. Department of Education as well as us for SCDE to make sure that you are following what you need to get your application completed and submitted. Online application should be done and approved by your superintendent by August the 31st and submitted to us here at SCDE. Next, we're going to talk about the actual allowable use of the funds. We need to be careful that you're not going to be supplementing supplement and not supplant. Under your Title IV funds, you know that they can be used they may be used only to supplement your educational programs, which are activities that will be provided for the state and with state and local funds. As an LEA, you may not use your Title IV funds to pay for activities that is in the absence of these funds. So this would mean that you could, if your funds are missing from state and local funding, it cannot be substituted. You cannot use your Title IV funds for this, and would provide those state and local funds. Excuse me. I do apologize. Let's move on to your fiscal management portion of it. Let's talk about the record retention. All financial and programmatic records and supporting documents, you must keep these for 5 years after the expiration of the grant. Keep in mind, though, if you have any type of litigation, any claim, negotiation, audit, or other actions, we need to make sure that you retain these until the resolution of it. Or if the resolution is done, then you can always discard your paperwork at the end of the regular 5-year period. You just have to keep in mind it has to be whichever is later. Let's talk a little bit about the amendments. Amendments is required when there is an increase or decrease in the total grant. You must also submit an amendment if there is a change in the scope of an activity or in the functions object code. Your steps for taking this will be first for the district to update the outline application in GEMS. Once we here at the South Carolina Department of Education reviews your amendments, we have 1 or 2 choices if we have to send it back to get some further information for edits, or we can go ahead and approve it. Once it is approved on step 3, the districts will then complete the amendment in GAPS. SEDE will approve the amendment in GAPS as well. Just please remember that amendments should be approved before the activity takes place. And always submit the budget amendment is approximately, the last day, to submit the amendment is approximately June 5th. Now let's talk about the drawdown of funds. Districts are expected to draw down the funds in a timely manner. Keep in mind this should be done at least quarterly. You can do your drawdowns on a monthly basis. And always remember the claims are being tracked quarterly. That's going to be done in-house by my colleague Sheree Mosley, but this will be done to ensure that all districts are drawing down their funds in timely manners. Now, your Title IV funds can actually be transferred. You can transfer them to another program. This program that you can transfer them to will always be your Title I Part A, your Title II Part A, and Title V Part A. The funds transferred become subject to all the rules and regulations for the grant that you're transferring it to. So, for example, if you take your Title IV program money and want to transfer it to Title I, all of the rules and regulations for Title I will naturally be assumed by this Title IV that you transfer to Title I. So the Title IV rules and regulations will no longer stand once it's transferred to the title that you prefer to choose to transfer it to. Just make sure that you, as the LEA, consider the transfer and how it will impact the set-asides, especially in Title I and for your equitable services. Now we're going to talk about the monitoring. The monitoring that we have is the on-site monitoring is actually done by a consolidated oversight and a monitoring team. They will visit the LEA to review the criteria included in their monitoring protocol that they have. Please remember that LEAs are monitored both the risk and a monitoring cycle. The on-site monitoring helpful hints. Always make sure that you document your Title IV meetings. Have the agendas that you used for your meetings, your sign-in sheets that you have for all of your stakeholders that were in attendance, and for the minutes. Please make sure the charges are for approved activities in the GEMS plan. So whatever you put in GEMS, just make sure that you've actually had this documented properly like you should. And that is all that I have for Title IV.
Thank you so much, Theresa. Awesome job. Martha, are there any questions in the chat boxes related to Title IV?
We do have one question from Audrey Brady. Where may I find resources on Title IV on the SCDE website? She sees the Title I landing page, but not the Title IV landing page.
Okay. Audrey, if you'd like to contact me in a separate email, I'll be happy to give you some guidance as to where you can find some more information.
And Jennifer, that's the only question that we have right now.
Okay, that sounds great. Now, normally, thank you, Martha. If we had been in person, I think that probably would have taken a little longer than what it did, just because we're able to kind of walk around and talk with you and have a little more interaction. So we had planned for lunch to be right at the end of Title IV, but we're going to go ahead and move on through Title II and work our way up to the 11:30 mark. I would imagine we will be able to finish all of Title II prior to going to lunch. So Leslie Bloss and myself are going to take care of talking you through Title II. So if you have any questions regarding Title II as we go throughout this process, please make sure that you type those into the chat box. I will say before we start Title II that outside of Title I, this is probably the next largest grant that we have. And so I'm going to talk to you about how the allocations are determined. It is a little more intensive than I would say Title IV or Title V. So we want to make sure that we're able to give you a good understanding of the expectations for Title II. Title II, to me, has a new name. It's called Supporting Effective Instruction. You never know with these different titles, things sometimes can be changed. They might be called something new. For instance, if you're doing REAP, sometimes REAP might be called RLIS. We'll talk about those kinds of things later on, but Title II Part A is called Supporting Effective Instruction, and it means just what it says. The funds are supposed to be used to support effective instruction, whereas Title I really goes to support the students. Title II is really meant for the teachers and administrators. So it's nice to know that some funding can be used to help provide professional development or to support maybe teacher stipends, things of that nature. If you've ever been in the classroom, you know that the teacher is the one really in the trench doing the main part of the educating of those students. So we want to support them as best we can through our titles. And Title II specifically, this one is used a lot for class size reduction, professional development, and so forth. Right. Let me give you a little background as far as Title II is concerned. Title II Part A used to be called Improving Teacher Quality State Grant. It was originally authorized as the Eisenhower Professional Development Program and Class Size Reduction Program under the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965. Then it was reauthorized as the No Child Left Behind Act in 2001. And then reauthorized as the Every Student Succeeds Act in 2015. Gives you a little background of when Title II came into being. All right, the overview of this program. What is the purpose of Title II? What is the difference between Title II and Title I? So you may be joining us today as a Title II coordinator. You might be joining us today as a Title IV coordinator or a Title V, or maybe even a Title I new coordinator sitting in, or maybe you're a federal programs director and you run all the programs. If that is you, you're going to have to be able to distinguish between the differences between all the programs. Title II is different than what Theresa presented with Title IV. This one does not have 3 content areas that you have to focus on and look at allowable uses of funds within those 3 content areas. This one is to increase student achievement consistent with challenging state academic standards, to improve the quality and effectiveness of teachers and principals. On a side note, we have an allowable use of funds guidance document that we are welcome to provide to you if you do not already have a copy of that. That document kind of helps break it down. I like to say like a no-no list of things that are not allowable and a yes list of things that are allowable under each program. But Title II on the yes side is really there to support, like I said, the quality and the effectiveness of a teacher or a principal. What is it that they need to make them more effective? The purpose of it is also to increase the number of teachers and principals who are effective in improving student academic achievement in schools, and to provide low-income and minority students greater access to effective teachers and principals. And how do we do that? We may pay stipends or help with retention or recruitment, and we can talk about that a little more in detail as we move forward. What are the 3 guiding principles for Title II? It is to, number 1, to provide support for educators. Again, it goes back to who is standing in front of those students and how can we support and maintain and retain those educators. Educator equity and strengthening Title II Part A investments. Those are the 3 guiding principles for this particular grant. And what does that mean? Principle 1. How do we support educators? By using multiple pathways to teaching and leading, induction and mentorship, meaningful evaluation and support, strong teacher leadership, and transformative school leadership. Educator equity. Principle number 2. State plans under ESSA must indicate how low-income and minority children are not served as disproportionate rates by ineffective, out-of-field, or inexperienced teachers. Okay, we are looking for not longer highly qualified, but highly qualified went away a little time ago. But however, we have to make sure that they are correctly and properly certified, and that equity is being provided with that educator in that classroom. What is the definition of an ineffective teacher? An ineffective teacher will be defined as a teacher on an annual or continuing contract who has received a not met rating for 1 year, or a teacher on an induction contract who has received a not met rating for 2 consecutive years, as outlined in the expanded ADEPT system guidelines. An inexperienced teacher is defined as an educator who has 3 or fewer years of teaching experience, as indicated on their South Carolina license. In South Carolina, districts may keep their teachers on induction contracts for up to 3 years. What is an out-of-field teacher? An out-of-field teacher is defined as a teacher who is teaching 1 or more courses or classes in a subject for which they do not have the appropriate certification. Required credentials for professional staff members in the instructional program of South Carolina's public schools, which is updated annually, establishes the acceptable certification credentials for educators working in various settings and roles. Now I want to pause for a minute and speak very real time as far as what we are doing when we look in the Title II GEMS project and how we are checking certifications and so forth. If you, as the Title II coordinator or federal programs coordinator, want to do class size reduction, teachers, and you want to support with Title II funds, there is a link that you will go to in GEMS that is for class size reduction. And what we have to do is take a look to make sure that everybody is properly certified for the grade level that they are going to be teaching, making sure that their certification is up to date. And we also have to check the class size ratios to make sure they meet the state's guidance, and also make sure that the math is done correctly on that link. So many things going on within the GEMS project as it's related to educators. Principle 3, strengthening the Title II Part A investments. What is that like? Those are chosen interventionists must align with identified needs. What are the needs? The evidence base and the district capacity are considered when selecting a strategy, and there is a robust implementation plan. Adequate resources are provided so the implementation is well supported, and information is gathered regularly to examine the strategy and to reflect on and inform the next steps. So 3 guiding principles for this grant. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the allocations to the LEAs. Like I mentioned earlier, Sheree Mosley handles our allocations that go out to the LEAs. And you may wonder, like, well, how is that calculated and what goes on with doing LEA allocations? Please know that the majority of the funding that is given out goes to the school districts. Yes, we are able to do a little bit of reserve on our end for admin, maybe some state level and certain grants, but the majority of these funds are going out to support the school districts. And so what is the background for doing allocations with Title II? It is based on Title I allocations and total population, class size reduction allocations based on both poverty and the total population. And under ESSA, the allocation to LEAs is now based solely on the weighted formula using the census data, which is 80% poverty and 20% population. So we have a little chart that will kind of help explain a little more about how we handle allocations for Title II within our office. The last time we had a new coordinators meeting, I went over how allocations are handled for Title I. Title I has a school improvement reserve. Title II does not. That's one of the differences between the two. Here, though, you can see how it's broken down that not less than 95% are for LEA subgrants, and we can take up to 5% for state level activities. Period of performance. I can remember a few years back, Title II was open for 2 years, whereas Title I, we would pull it offline and then we would put it back online with what we called a carryover. And Title II was running as a 2-year grant even back then. So we have actually moved the model for Title II from a few years back when Karen Cook was running this program to how we handle Title I, Title IV, and Title V. All of these grants are now open for a 2-year period, or I'll be specific, 27 months. So what happens is we put in the final allocations around October, and that allocation is left in the system for GEMS and GAPS for the 2-year duration of that grant. So we do not change the allocations unless once in a blue moon we receive a revision from the U.S. Department of Ed. That is not something I have seen within the last year or two. However, some years back, we would get revisions from the U.S. Department of Ed and have to tweak yet again. I've not seen that lately. So normally what happens is we put in a final allocation around October, and that money amount stays in the system until the expiration of the grant. So it's open for 2 years. So you can make amendments there as you need to and make quarterly claims. Sheree was giving some insight on how we're going to deal with indirect cost rates moving forward. So beginning with the 22 grants, your superintendent should have received a memo from me last Tuesday, I believe it was, regarding how we're dealing with indirect cost rates procedures, starting with the 22 grants. And I'm going to sidebar from Title II just for a moment to talk about indirect cost rate. So forgive me, but I feel like it's an appropriate time to kind of bird walk for a moment. So going into the second year of a grant, we will have to start tweaking the indirect cost rates, because an indirect cost rate is only good for a year. It is an annual thing. The Office of Auditing Services, ran by Melissa Myers here at the State Department of Education, they consult with each school district and they negotiate new indirect cost rates on an annual basis. So whereas in the past, we would handle indirect cost rate the same as we did a final allocation. We would put that indirect cost rate and what it was at its current state around October, and it would be left there for the duration of the grant. We are moving away from that and moving into handling it the way that we should as far as on an annual basis. So beginning with the 22 grants, we will be going in and updating that indirect cost rate again on the second year of the grant. So somebody may say, well, approximately what time frame and how do you handle that? That will be done around October again, the second year of the grant, about the time that we're giving out new final allocations for, say, the 23 year. We would be changing the new grant and changing the old grant at that time. I've had some people to ask me, well, how does that impact? If your new indirect cost rate gives you more of a maximum that you can take, there won't be any issues. The problem will come in is if the indirect cost rate kind of drops in the maximum that you can take. So that is something that I wanted to give some time for preparation and conversations to be held within the school district on how you plan to deal with that if the rate were to drop a little bit. So you know well in advance, I'm not going into the 19, 20, or 21s to make this change. I want to be fair to the districts and let you know well ahead of time that this is a situation that is coming. Also, this change to indirect cost rates will calls for us to have to do an amendment to the GAN. So say for the 22 Title I, Title II, Title IV, Title V GANs that have already gone out, you will get an amended GAN along with your superintendent regarding an amendment based upon that indirect cost rate. So that is something that is coming, but that is how a 2-year period of performance is handled within those grants. Yesterday was August the 15th. I was up on into the evening last night making sure there were no amendments out there awaiting so that all claims could be pushed through by midnight of last night, because that is a hard deadline. My office has no, we can't help that it closes down at midnight. So we try to make sure we've got everything processed on our side. If you are a new coordinator, please make sure that you make note of this, that claims through June the 30th must be submitted in GAPS every year by August the 15th. This is on the GAN, it's in the cover letter, it's on the homepage of GEMS. We're sending out email reminders. It is so important that those claims are submitted by the end of the night, because that system locks down and it will not accept it after midnight that night. And then you can reference your GAN for a final expenditure when the grant is closing September 30th. The date there is normally November the 15th. In the past, I have seen November the 10th, but here lately it's been November the 15th. So please make sure that as a new coordinator, you make a copy of your GAN so that you can read all the important information about that grant and you can share it with your finance person. Lots of important financial details come on a GAN as well. Work with your district finance staff to ensure timely submissions. Okay, you as a coordinator, a word to the wise from me. I'm going to turn my camera on so that you can see me. A word to the wise. If you are a new coordinator, whether it's Title I, Title II, Title IV, Title V, if it's Title III, I don't even run that program. N and D, whichever it is, make good friends with your finance department, because the left hand always needs to know what the right hand is doing. It is imperative that finance understands what's going on in the GEMS project. Okay, remember that amendments begin programmatically. They do not begin in the finance office. They begin with the programmatic side, making amendments to GEMS, and then once GEMS amendments are approved, then amendments are made to GAPS. So finance and program need to know what one another are doing so they can keep GEMS and GAPS matching, and there's no issues when it comes to claiming. So become best buddies with the finance department. It will work wonders in your favor later on. All right, maintenance of effort. If you have done anything with Title I, maintenance of effort wise, this is, you're good with Title II. MOE is typically calculated by the district Title I or the finance office. You are required to maintain physical effort for Title II. That is often looked at whenever the monitoring team comes out. If a district does not meet MOE and a waiver is not granted, title funding will be reduced. So as a new coordinator, you might say, well, Jennifer, what does that look like, sound like, feel like, act like? We never want to take money away from you, but there are reasons that sometimes allocations are decreased, and this is one of them. You have to maintain your maintenance of effort, or your MOE. Greg King is the guru within our division for handling maintenance of effort. So if you have maintenance of effort questions, please email Greg King as he can answer those. He and Karen Cook and their team, they take care of this out in the field when it comes to monitoring and auditing. So he's able to answer a lot of questions when it comes to maintenance of effort. All right, the needs assessment. What is a needs assessment? The needs assessment is a systematic effort to acquire an accurate, thorough picture of the strengths and areas of improvement of a district. What does that look like? As the Title II coordinator, you should know what needs there are for your district. And if you run all the title programs, then you're going to have to learn what the needs are for that can be met for each of the programs. Like, how can Title I meet the needs of the schools? How can Title II meet the needs of the districts? How can Title IV come in to meet the needs of the districts and schools? How can Title V support? So how you learn that is you conduct a needs assessment. We really went into detail at New Coordinators Training Day 1 about how to conduct a needs assessment. You need to know what the needs are. How do you do that? You meet with stakeholders, you have conversations, you talk about what's going on and how can we support. I will tell you that this is something that we do on the state level as well. Anytime we consider making changes like I was describing about an indirect cost rate, procedural change, I meet with our stakeholder group, those that have kind of served in this capacity for quite some time. We come to the table and we discuss things out prior to final decisions being made. This is a time where people bring input to the table. So conduct a needs assessment, use your information and data to structure decisions that can determine the priorities and the goals for using these funds. It is a way to determine what is happening that is impacting student learning and hypothesize what the root cause might be. So it is your time to figure out what's going on in the district and how you can use the funds to support those needs. What's the purpose for Title II? The LEA must assure that information is gathered concerning the needs of its teaching force and school leaders in order to support all the students in meeting challenging state content and standards. To determine the needs of the LEA as it relates to the grant requirements, and to maintain an annual action plan of improvement. Who are the stakeholders that I'm referring to? They can be teachers, principals, other school leaders. Guess who knows what the needs are? The teachers and the principals. I promise. Call them to the table and have some conversations. Paraprofessionals, instructional support personnel, charter school leaders, private school administrators. These are folks that will be impacted by the grant, so they need to come to the table on the front end so that you'll know how to plan to support the district. You want to establish a timeline. Start in an appropriate amount of time to get a full understanding of what the needs are so that you can plan. Engage your stakeholders. You should be keeping adequate documentation. Now, yes, we have gone to a virtual learning environment in many capacities. So if you invite stakeholders to a virtual meeting, you need to save the emails or the form stack, any kind of thing that looks like an agenda or a meeting notification. You need to have some summary notes from having had the meeting so that when the auditing team comes out in the field, they can pull those references and those records and compare it to what's going on in the project. Those are things that Greg King and Karen Cook will look for when they come out in the field. All right, you want to summarize and analyze your data to identify strengths and areas for growth. This is really big when it comes to Title I as well. You need to analyze the student data so that you'll know for Title I exactly what those kids need. Are they struggling? Do they have deficits in reading? What's going on? So for Title I, you could buy maybe a reading program or a reading kit to support the needs. For Title II, you may find that you have a hard time recruiting teachers. That might be a need for the district. So you want to summarize and analyze your data to know how you can support. The needs assessment will reflect a wide array of needs, not all of which may be able to be addressed with limited physical resources. Prioritize the needs where Title II is likely to produce the most positive results in teaching practice and the achievement of students. So you want to prioritize to make sure that you get the biggest bang for your buck and can see the actual positive results coming from that. On a sidebar, I want to tell you that you should take a look at the end of grants to see the impact. Is what I did it work? Did it not? Do I need to change? You always want to take a look at your outcomes and make sure that you're using the resources appropriately. You do not have to do the same activities from year to year, especially if something is not working or is not needed. It should be a fluid document, basically based on the needs of your district. What are some suggested data sources? Local, state, and national assessments, teacher surveys, PD course schedule, participation and evaluation, student discipline, equity data, induction feedback, audit reports, or monitoring reports. the online application. If you'll excuse me for one moment, I'm going to take a sip of water. Thank you. A lot of talking at one time. What is the online application? Online application is called GEMS. We currently use the GEMS system. We use GAPS for the physical part for claiming purposes, but the online application is up and running early in the summer for Title II so that you can put in preliminary plans and we can go ahead and begin looking at those. Those activities within that project should be based on the needs assessment and the allocation awarded. You need to go to the allocation tab to look to see how much your district is receiving for Title II funds. The budget overview tab in GEMS will help you know if you're balancing the budget correctly, or if there's a remaining balance, you want to work that down to 0. So the pages within GEMS will help you know where errors may be occurring so that you can get that budget balanced based on the activities written within the project. You want to follow the guidance from the U.S. Department of Ed and from our office when you develop your plan. And most of the time, the Title II applications are due to us from your superintendent by July 31st. I will be honest with you, on a side note, our office is still heavy in the weeds of looking at Title I. Although these were due July 31st, once we get Title I under our belt and approved, we'll move right into Title II. Some of us are already looking at Title II, but Title I takes significantly longer to look at. So we're working, so know that if you have already had your Title II application submitted, we will soon be looking and providing you some feedback. Okay. I'm going to turn the reins over to Leslie Blost for a few minutes. She and I are going to tag team Title II because it is significantly longer than Title IV and Title V. So Leslie, do you want to request control or do you want me to run the slides?
I'd love for you to continue to run the slides.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, guys, so back to allowable use of funds. All right, so necessary and reasonable means that you are being prudent with the checkbook. All costs associated with the outlined activities should be in that LEA plan, should reflect sound business practices, and should also reflect market prices for comparable goods and services for that geographic area. Okay, supplement, not supplant. So Title II funds may be used only to supplement educational programs, program activities provided with state and local funds. The LEA may not use Title II funds to pay for activities that, in the absence of these funds, would be provided with state and local funds. And Title II funds may be used to fund only the professional development activities that supplement those mandated locally or by the state, and can supplement those discretionary professional development activities that the LEA would fund in the absence of other local and state funding. In the following instances, it is presumed that supplanting has occurred if the LEA used federal funds to provide services that were required under other federal, state, or local laws. An example of supplanting would be if a district was paying for the required Read to Succeed coursework required by the state law. However, if the district decides to pay for additional Read to Succeed coursework beyond what is required, the district would be supplementing the PD. So we have these required courses for Read to Succeed. We can't pay for the required ones, but if it's above and beyond what's required, then yes, that's supplemental. The LEA used federal funds to provide services that were provided with non-federal funds in the prior year. All right. So these are some allowable uses of Title II funding, and we're going to dig deeper into each one of these pockets. So you can go on to the next page because I'm going to dig deeper. All right, so the first one is recruiting and retaining highly effective teachers. So you can do this through signing bonuses, differential pay, recruitment fair registrations and travel, induction programs, teacher mentors, class size reduction, and then incentives for teachers and principals who have a record of success. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about class size reduction. LEAs may reduce class size by creating additional classes in a particular grade or subject and placing qualified teachers hired with program funds in those classes. Federal funds cannot be used to meet state and local class size requirements. So what that means is that, and on the next page, I'll tell you about what our requirements are state level. But if you are above what the state requirement is, you cannot use federal funds to bring down that class size. The school and grade level for a class size reduction teacher must be documented in the needs assessment and listed in that online application, which Jennifer was referring to earlier. Class size reduction cannot be used for gifted or special education programs. All right, so here's the ratios that I was referring to. So maximum class sizes have been upheld by our state legislator. So for kindergarten to third grade, it's 30-1. For 4th, 5th, and 6th in ELA and math, it's 30-1. For 4th, 5th, and 6th in the other subjects, it's 35-1. And then for 7th to 12th, it's 35-1 as well. So you have to be underneath these state levels in order to implement a class size reduction teacher. Now, how do I figure that out? So what you're going to do is you're going to run PowerSchool for a report for the grade. You're going to subtract the federally funded teachers from the total number of teachers for that grade. You're going to divide the number of students by the number of state-funded teachers assigned to the grade level. If the calculation is at or below the guidelines that we just talked about, then you are supplementing that activity. If the calculation is above the guidelines, then you have a supplanting issue. And we'll be glad to talk you guys through that a little bit more if you contact your program manager. All right. So with class size reduction, you need to be very cautious when applying funds to a position that was previously funded with state or local dollars. You need to maintain documentation supporting the reduction of funds, and you need to contact us for any more guidance. So what do I need to keep on hand for documentation for class size reduction? You need to have that class size reduction worksheet. You need a school master schedule in chart format for each school that has a class size reduction teacher. You need to have daily schedules or teachers grouped by grade level or the content. So that means like self-contained, you need a grade level, the total number of students in each class. And if it's departmentalized, then you need the course name for each class, the total number of students in each class. And then you also need to keep on file those semi-annual certifications. All right, so the second part is professional development. So the term professional development means activities that are integral part of the district strategies for providing educators with the knowledge and skills necessary to enable students to succeed in a well-rounded education and to meet challenging state standards. And there also are sustained, not standalone one-day or short-term workshops, but they're sustained, intensive, collaborative, job-embedded, data-driven, and classroom-focused. All right, so authorized use of funds include providing professional development activities that improve the knowledge of teachers and principals and, in appropriate cases, paraprofessionals, or include improving instructional practices such as addressing the needs of students with different learning styles, improving student behavior in the classroom, involving parents in their child's education, especially limited English proficient, understanding and using data and assessments to drive instruction, and integrating technology into instruction. All right, so this is if you're choosing to send, you can go ahead to the next page for me. All right, so if you're choosing to send teachers to a conference, then you can reimburse them for travel and meals. You can find that, the guidelines for that at this website, www.gsa.gov, which will give you your per diems, or the most recent ones. All right, so there's some additional compensation that can take place with professional developments. You can have supplements, which are funds received for providing services above and beyond salary, commonly used for funding mentors and paying teachers to provide professional learning. And this is outside of their contract hours. Stipends are given to certified personnel for having successfully completed professional development that has occurred outside of the employee's contracted hours. And then substitutes can be funded from Title II for time teachers are out of the classroom attending a Title II funded professional development. So I can only pay for the substitutes that are being substitutes for teachers attending professional development that's paid for out of your Title II plan. I can also purchase supplies for professional development. These supplies need to be reasonable and necessary to carry out that professional development. You may purchase professional learning books for a book study on a topic that aligns with the needs assessment, but you may not purchase books to stock a professional learning reference library. You may purchase 15 graphing calculators for teachers to use during the professional development on math content, but I may not purchase a classroom set of graphing calculators for that teacher to implement the strategies. Any supplies that I am purchasing needs to stay in the hands of the teachers. All right, the third section, professional development tied to leadership. So under ESSA, it says that districts may use Title II funds to provide professional development for teachers, instructional leadership teams, principals, and other school leaders. All right, so ESSA defines school leader as a principal, assistant principal, or other individual who is an employee of an elementary or secondary school district, or other entity operating an elementary or secondary school, or someone who is responsible for the daily instructional leadership and managerial operations in the elementary or secondary school building. All right, continuing with professional development leadership. All right, professional development to help principals and superintendents become outstanding managers and educational leaders is also allowed, and also development and support of academies to help talented aspiring principals or superintendents. All right, the next section is multiple career paths. So we have programs like PACE, CATE, Teach for America, and EPI. You can use Title II fundings to help a teacher go through these programs. You can also use Title II funding for teacher advancement to help promote professional growth, to emphasize those multiple career paths. You can help them help pay for mentor training, any additional certifications like Montessori, Gifted and Talented, ESOL. You can help with National Board, and you can also help with advanced degrees. So we talked about things that are allowable, what's not allowable. Unfortunately, we cannot pay for food for those professional developments. I cannot pay for general substitute teachers. The only substitute teachers that I can pay for are either for the class size reduction teachers that are being paid for through the grant, or teachers that are attending the professional development that is written into the grant. I cannot purchase instructional materials. Remember, those materials have to stay in the hands of the teachers, not things that go into the hands of the students. I cannot pay for evaluator training. This is a supplanting issue. I cannot pay for MAP testing and other benchmark testing, technology and equipment, or any recruitment giveaways with that district logo on it. That references to what I talked about earlier. So a couple things that are new with Title II. ESSA is now supporting instructional services provided by libraries. So I can attend professional development intended to improve the instructional services provided by effective school library programs. It's also, ESSA is also supporting instructional services provided by school counselors. These can be to ensure students achieve academically and are college and career ready. It can also be how to teach and address the needs of students with different learning styles. And it can include training and methods to improve student behavior in the classroom and to identify early interventions for help through that school counselor. Title II can also be used to support students affected by trauma or mental illness in professional development. So I can hold an in-service training for school personnel and techniques and support related to identifying and supporting students affected by trauma or mental illness. And then I can also hold professional developments on how to prevent and recognize child sexual abuse. And now I'm turning it back over to Jennifer to talk about private schools.
Thank you so much, Leslie. Awesome job. So how are private schools handled with Title II? Private school teachers, principals, and assistant principals are eligible to participate in the Title II Part A project. I'm sorry, that tied my tongue for a moment. Private schools must hold a nonprofit status to be eligible to use these funds. Two options: to participate with the district or to receive an allocation which remains managed by the district. You should not be giving funds directly to the private school. The allocation that you give them has to be managed by the district. What do the invitations look like, sound like? Who did they go to? Invitations should be sent to private schools within the geographic boundaries of your district. If you do not have any, then you would just say not applicable. For involvement in the next fiscal year, mailed in a timely fashion in order to allow the participants the opportunity to take part in the annual needs assessment. So you got to keep your timelines in mind. You got to send them a letter asking if they want to participate prior to you really conducting your needs assessment. Number one, so you know how much money you're going to be working with, and also so that they can be able to work for their school as well. So everything needs to be done in a timely fashion. You would mail it, mailed by USPS registered receipt, and can coordinate mailing with other federal programs. So whenever you handle this private school participation for Title I, you could do it at the same time. You're going to mail them, ask them if they want to participate, give them a specific deadline for responding to you, keep all of the documentations, the receipt of having received all that, so that when the monitoring team comes out, you can provide all of that handheld documentation for having offered for those private schools to participate. How do we calculate the private school allocations? You'll want to use this slide when you get ready to do this. It's broken down very specifically to help tailor just the information for you to know how to go about doing the calculations for private schools. It's the total public school students plus the total participating private school students to give you the total number of those kids. Then you take the Title II allocation, you divide it by the total number of those students to get yourself a PPA, and then you take that PPA amount times the number of the students enrolled in the private school to then produce the private school allocation. This little chart goes into detail for that. We will post these on our website within the next handful of days, and when we do, I'll send out an email notification letting you know where you can find this so that you can go back in and print this if you would like for your own resource and availability. Okay, the private schools needs assessment. Ensure timely and meaningful consultation. Document the meeting. Keep the meeting notification. Keep the sign-in sheet. Keep the minutes. Because again, the monitoring team will ask to see these things when they come on site. Private school needs assessment. The private school official should provide input into the planning of the LEA's programs activities. How students' needs inform the professional learning needs of teachers and principals. What do the kids need? So therefore, that helps me to figure out what kind of PD I need to fund for the teachers and the principals and what services are going to be offered. If you write an activity into GEMS for Title II and you're doing contracted services, we're going to need to know who's providing the professional development, how often are they providing it, what's the rate of pay, who's participating. You need to be very detailed when you describe your professional development within the GEMS project. You also want to talk about how your services will be assessed when you discuss needs assessment. Private school permissible use of funds. Title II funds may be used for PD activities for teachers, principals, and headmasters to address the specific needs of their students. All funds must be under the control and supervision of the public agency responsible for providing the equitable services. And to the extent that teachers attend a faith-based conference, Title II funds may be expended to pay for the portion of the conference costs determined to represent the secular PD in which the teacher participated. So on a side note, there sometimes are Christian schools that are considered private schools within your district's range. This bullet would be relative to the type of PD that they may attend that would be supported by Title II. Private schools may not use Title II funds for class size reduction because a private school's contracts for its teachers would be inconsistent with the requirements of the ESSA Section 8501D regarding public control of funds and the supervision and control of employees or contractors. So please keep that in mind when you talk to the private schools about how they can use the funding. Private school reimbursements. Districts cannot reimburse private schools directly. I said that earlier. The district may obligate and expend federal funds. The district itself must procure the services, it must purchase the materials, it must reimburse individual or teachers or principals if those activities are written within the plan. A district must ensure expenses are reasonable, necessary, and allowable. So you as the Title II person are really overseeing that everything that private school is wanting to do meets the letter of the law and it's reasonable, necessary, and that it is allowable. That is one of your responsibilities. All right, how do we handle charter schools? Charter schools in South Carolina are public schools. Either charter is held by the district or the South Carolina Public Charter School District or Erskine. If your district holds the charter, You're going to treat the charter school as any other school in your district. If the charter is part of South Carolina Public Charter School District or the Institute at Erskine, the charter school will receive Title II services through them. Okay, Leslie?
Yep, I'm back. All right, so professional qualifications. All right, so with the reauthorization of ESSA, highly qualified requirements were removed from the law. However, LEA should hire teachers who are properly certified for their teaching assignment, and our states began using IOI, or ineffective, out of field, and inexperienced, in 2017 and 18, and began reporting data with that in the 2018-19 school year. And Jennifer talked a little bit about that earlier. So something that hasn't been removed from the law is parents' right to know. So we must notify parents in a format that is understandable and in a medium that will reach all parents. So if possible, you need to provide it in the language that the parent will understand. We need to also communicate with them and ensure that the notification includes the principal's contact information, the school or LEA name, and the date of the notification. So what does that mean? What is parents' right to know? Go on to the next slide for me. So we must notify parents that they may request the following information regarding their child's teacher: whether the teacher has met the South Carolina certification requirements for the grade level and the subject area in which the teacher provides instruction, whether the teacher is teaching under an emergency or other provisional status through the South Carolina qualification or certification criteria has been waived, the college major and any graduate certification or degree held by the teacher, and whether the student is provided services by paraprofessionals, and if so, their qualifications. So they have the right to know, to inquire about these things. And we see that a lot of schools and districts include letting parents know that they have that right through their school and district handbooks. And then we also see that a lot of teachers just go ahead and share a majority of this information in like their Meet the Teacher letters at the beginning of the school year. So there's also the 20-day letter. So LEAs are required to notify parents of children in Title I schools when their child is assigned to or taught for 20 or more consecutive days by a teacher who is not properly certified for the teaching assignment. Sometimes we see this with like when people are out on sick leave and we have substitutes coming in for an extended period of time. All right. So with my Title II funding and also my Title IV, I can transfer those funds into a different program. I can transfer them into Title I, Migrant, Neglected and Delinquent, Title II, Title III, Title IV, or Title V. Now, you need to remember that those funds transfers become subject to all the rules and regulations for the grant that they are transferred into. So if I'm transferring money from Title IV into Title II, it has to be spent on professional development or class size reduction. If I'm transferring money into Title I, we get into a whole gamut of different rules and regs that we're following for Title I. LEAs must consider how the transfer will impact the required set-asides, like for Title I example, and also equitable services. All right. This is our favorite part, right? Risk assessments. So a risk assessment is a systematic process of evaluating the potential risk that may be involved in a projected activity or undertaking. It is required by law, and the LEAs are assigned points based upon the following elements: key personnel turnover, for instance, like your federal programs coordinators, required reporting, programmatic compliance, fiscal compliance, performance outcomes, and also the level of technical assistance. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you that does not mean do not call us for assistance. We are here for that. So don't let that deter you from doing that. So with our risk assessments, we have a rating scale. You are low risk if you receive 9 to 18 points. You're medium risk if you receive 19 to 28 points, and high risk if you receive 29 points or above. The results of the agency-wide rating may impact technical assistance and monitoring. So if you have a high risk, you may, no, you're going to see some monitoring. All right, so what does it mean? What's high risk? Well, that means that the LEAs are designated high risk may be subject to annual monitoring, written reporting, program implementation, and corrective action, and then increased technical assistance. So on-site technical assistance, required attendance at trainings, and invoice review prior to drawdown of funds. What does it mean if you're medium risk? LEAs designated medium risk may be subject to monitoring, so an interim program on site or desk monitoring, written reporting, so with the program implementation, increased technical assistance, so some on-site technical assistance, and required attendance at trainings. And for my low risk friends, LEAs are designated low risk may be subject to monitoring because we have a monitoring cycle, right? So let's talk about monitoring. All right. So for on-site monitoring, you get to work with our consolidated oversight and monitoring team that is run by Karen Cook. The LEAs are monitored both on risk and on a monitoring cycle. And approximately 1/3 of LEAs are monitored on site each year. So here's some helpful hints if you are in that monitoring cycle. Make sure that you are documenting your Title II meetings, that you have agendas, sign-in sheets, minutes. If you're doing it virtually, take a snapshot, keep the invitation notice and who's responded that they're attending. Take a snapshot of all those beautiful faces on the Zoom or Google Meet. Retain signed mail receipts from private schools. Use an online survey for teachers' professional development needs, and keep copies of these results on file. Make sure that charges for the approved activities are in your district plan, and ensure that the district and school websites are up to date. And that is the end of our Title II section. So, Miss Martha, do we have any questions?
I don't see any questions right now pertaining to Title II. Oh, hold on, let's see. It says, this question that just popped in, when will we know if or when we are on an upcoming monitoring cycle?
If you are curious about when your district will be monitored, whether for Title I, II, IV, V, you're welcome to contact Karen Cook or Greg King, and they can let you know where you land on that cycle monitoring list. Thank you, Martha.
Okay, and I don't see any questions right now pertaining to Title II, but there is a question up here. Let's see, from Karen McMakin regarding Title IV. Would you like to address that now, Jennifer?
I can, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. How do you count activities that cross over more than one content area in Title IV?
I'm going to be honest with you, that is something that we need to look at. Like if you have a specific one, you can email the activity to your program manager, and the program manager and I can discuss where we think it falls best and how we think which in the program details link where it needs to fall, and try to help you in that area. So if you have a specific example, contact your program manager and we'll talk about it on our end and then be back in touch to try to support you best there.
All right, and Jennifer, those are all of the questions that we have right now dealing with Title IV and II. Okay.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right, I want to thank all the ladies that have participated in this morning's presentation. You've done a fantastic job. I want to thank everybody for attending up through our lunchtime. You're going to get to hear from Marcus Corbett after lunch. I know that we are a little bit early, but we are moving on along with today's presentation. So after we come back from lunch, we will do Title V and then have some closing remarks. So since we are kind of moving along at more of a rapid pace than what we would be if we were in person with you, I would like to extend lunch from 11:30 until 1 o'clock. And so when we come back at 1 o'clock, we'll come back into doing Title V and then our wrap up for the day. So thank you for joining us. I'm going to leave everything up like it is and turn the camera and the microphone off, and it will sit ready to come back from lunch at Title V. So take a break, have some water, and enjoy your lunchtime, and we will see you at 1 o'clock.